Hi, I'm Lincoln Hirata. I am the co-director of the Asian and Pacific American Student Union here on campus.
Hi, my name is Caleb Correa. I am from Eva Beach, Oahu, and I am one of the luau coordinators for my club, Huyo Hawaii.
My name is Isabel Delisai. I'm co-director of Culture of Filipinas.
My family is originally from Okayama and Ishiga in Japan. My great-great-grandfather came over in the late 1800s, early 1900s, searching for a better life.
So to my knowledge, I am Native Hawaiian and a lot of different European and I'm Irish, Portuguese, a bunch of different mixes.
So both of my parents immigrated to the US from the Philippines, both when they were pretty young. My dad came to the Philippines, I think around when he was 16. And then my mom came after she had taken the nursing board exam in the Philippines.
And my great-great-grandmother came over in 1912 as a picture bride to marry him. And they came through the Seattle port, and then they came down into Portland and lived here for quite a few years, and eventually
He got illegally overthrown. The main source of immigration was for plantations.
Parents also came here separately. My dad's parents came here, I think spent a part of his childhood away from his parents. And they both came to California.
lived off limited means, trying to search for a better life.
Sugarcane, pineapple, source for a lot of plantations because of our agricultural history.
They came to America looking for work and to help support their families back in the Philippines, because that's a pretty big part of Filipino culture is to help your family the best way possible. And for that, it was very common for a lot of Filipinos to try to move out of the Philippines to find better work.
Hi, I'm Vikram Thirumaran. I'm a junior studying computer science and data science. And I also work at the Multicultural Center. My family's from South India, so Tamil Nadu, that's the southernmost state on the southeastern tip of the Indian Peninsula. Mom came to the US when she was 11 with my grandparents. She grew up in Ohio and ended up working in California. And my dad actually came to the US after his education in India for work.
Funny enough, my great-grandfather on that side came here and actually had a tin box, and he said, when I fill this tin box up with money, I'm gonna go back to Japan.
My dad came for work opportunities, but compared to the home country that we were in, there was a lot of roadblocks, and I think my parents, or my dad at least, made the executive decision. He could get more progress in the US, yeah.
He thought literally the streets here were covered in gold. I mean, that's just what the prophecy was in Japan. They didn't speak any English. There was much sentiment against the Japanese. And so they kind of lived in more of a secluded area away from the modern city because they couldn't own any land at the time.
My name is Melina Siroth. I am the media intern for TSA, the Thai Student Association at UO. My grandparents immigrated from Laos after the secret war in Laos. They were in an internment camp where they had my aunt overseas. And then they decided to move to Salt Lake City, Utah to immigrate, where they had my mom and her younger sister. And from there, they moved to Portland right around when my mom was 20 years old, and we've been in Oregon ever since.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, and that kind of turned my whole family's life around. So you just think about what was lost. My great-grandmother had to raise 4 children in a barrack that was no bigger than, maybe 20 feet by 25 feet. They had lost everything that they had known. They were treated like animals. They had to line up for everything. No charges had been filed. Nothing had been accused of them other than that they were Japanese. Their resilience, and I think about how hard that must have been for them. To lose everything that you worked so hard for 20 or 30 years. Our community, our great-grandparents never talked about it at all because there's just so much shame accompanied by that. And they, it's even worse because they did nothing wrong other than look different than everybody else. And so I think that's why it's more important now that we do something for them, or at least I do something to help these other minorities, because no one helped them at that time.
My name's Ethan Vu. I am the president of the Chinese Student Association. So my family's immigration story, they happen to be refugees from the Vietnam War from Laos, since my parents are Hmong. They both, I believe, were in the refugee camps in Thailand for quite a while, a couple years, and then they were sponsored by other families over here in Sacramento, California to come to the US. So that's how my family got to the United States.
My name is Jessica Mias, and I'm a junior executive for APASU. To me, culture isn't just about like celebrations and traditions, but it's about stories that shape us and our family and who we are. So for me, and for my family's upbringing, in 1975, the Khmer Rouge took control of Cambodia, and it was led by Pol Pot, who was a Cambodian dictator.
And then I'm from JSA, our Japanese club at U of O, 5th gen Japanese American. My ancestors, I believe, they immigrated to Hawaii. This was a long time ago.
Went through the genocide, and during this time, everyday life was completely destroyed and disrupted. And the goal wasn't really about like political control, but it was more about just rewiping the entire history of Cambodia. And they died due to execution, starvation, overwork, and more.
And obviously, like, they didn't really have much, so they had to like work for everything. And I think those values like just carried on through the generations.
I'm Jay Pando. I'm a second year, and I am the ASCO Director of Communications. My whole family's from India. I'm first generation, born here in America.
My entire family lived this period, and my dad spent his teen years moving around Southeast Asia in different refugee camps before settling down in Oregon. And when my parents came to the US, they had little to nothing to their name, and they worked hard to build a life for the future generation, for me and my brothers, just because my parents were trying to avoid it or just not bring it up, because they didn't think it was important.
During the Pakistani and Indian War, had to leave all of his stuff where he was living because he was on the Pakistani side, and he walked over because of his beliefs at the time. He still lives there now. He walked over to India to find a new home, and he ended up at a place called Dadahu, which is a tiny place on top of a mountain. My dad is from a small town called Jammu in Kashmir in India, and my grandparents still live there along with some other family, and he was sent here. He came by himself, I think, at 15 years old.
As I've gotten older, I've learned that learning about my culture is a way to honor my parents and my family. And today, preserving the Cambodian culture feels more meaningful because it was at risk for being lost. And understanding our traditions and listening to stories help keep them alive. And it's a way of making sure that what happened doesn't define us completely, but also isn't forgotten. So to me, culture is about connection between generations, between the past and present, and also choosing what to remember, learn, and also what stories we choose to carry forward.
Education is extremely important in Indian culture, that, no matter how much you make, no matter what you do, education is the #1 priority. Today, that's all that they work towards, and I really see that it's paid off, and I really value that. That's what they prioritize.
I mean, APASU was a way for all of us to come together, really regardless of race, but just to come together and to share a lot of our common cultures, a lot of common beliefs, and to have fun while doing it. But I think it's also important to remember that while we are here as an Asian American and Pacific Islander group, right? Historically, we have been discriminated against. And so I think that's why it's important for us to show gratitude for our ancestors.
Uplift the community due to the annexation and the ban of our entire culture, because for about a century in our history, our culture was almost lost if it wasn't for the Hawaiian Renaissance and the arrival of just our community in general.
It's actually very connected to my Filipino culture. We would go to the Philippines every few years, and I would celebrate Filipino holidays and stuff. But then when I came here, something that I realized was a lot of people didn't have that aspect growing up, or didn't have that connection.
Yeah, so I think that's a super important part of why I do what I do. I like to advocate against the cultural erasure of my people. which is kind of an ongoing thing.
Us to educate ourselves and produce more Kanako throughout the communities. And through this, I found my passion in dancing, like dancing hula, of course.
My grandparents' immigration story is very important to me. I hold my culture close to my heart. Being Lao, Thai, and Vietnamese, I see culture around my life everywhere, and that bleeds into the work that I do at UO. As the media intern for TSA, I'm heavily involved in campus, and I do a lot of projects surrounding my heritage and my culture.
Family's backstory has definitely influenced my work at the U of O, especially because I'm quite involved in a lot of cultural clubs and just have always been very involved in like diversity, equity, and inclusion as well, which is kind of like my current position right now where I work for and just what I do in general for the Chinese community, as Hmong people are also from like the areas of southern China, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam and Cambodia.
Yeah, so for me, I grew up in a pretty predominantly like white schools, and I never really saw anyone that looked like me or came from like the same like ethnic background or anything. So I always felt pretty displaced, and I think as the more I got older and connected with just like the Cambodian community of Oregon, I really learned that, you know, your background is what makes you you, and it's definitely like something I hold pretty close to like my heart. So I feel like for me, like I've always loved working within the community and just doing like any like volunteer work for like the Cambodian community.
Separation of religion away from government, and we see those issues crop up every now and then at the university in spaces with multiple groups of people. So that's something I try to stay pretty steadfast in, whether it's my time at SACA and the South Asian Culture Alliance as an executive member, or time at the MCC working here, making sure spaces are open and equitable for all.
Being super immersed in my culture and being very close with people who still live in India, I do feel like I'm a generation that kind of has been a little bit Americanized, and I think growing up, I tried to learn things from my grandparents. There's a big language barrier, of course, and I tried my best to learn their language and all that. And coming here to Oregon, I've seen that there's a lot of people that are like that they don't feel super connected to their culture because they're so far away from it, especially in the South Asian Club. Bringing that culture, just what we wear, going to events which celebrate our holidays. It's a great way for me to stay connected to what maybe I missed out on growing up and maybe what I didn't understand. I think I finally understand it now. Seeing how other students who do live here, how they still keep in touch with their culture. So I think it's really powerful to keep that a part of yourself.
Try my best to showcase that throughout my club, first of all, because a lot of kids from Hawaii, even though we're all local, we all are just raised with like more of like just like a sense of community, but not our actual history. Just give them the information that I've learned, and I let them take as they please with it, because I feel like everyone's entitled to learn the way they choose to.
You know, I think like some of those values that were brought in through those generations like carried over and instilled in me and in my work at U of O.
Something that I wanted to bring and like kind of expose people to is just like the culture in the Philippines, foods like you eat in the Philippines, to like celebrations and holidays and all that.
My ancestors, they immigrated such a long time ago. I feel like part of that culture like kind of disappeared and was lost, and like I feel like, yeah, reconnect with my culture. And I feel like it's been like a pretty cool experience.
Right, to just not just back down and say, well, nothing's affecting us now, so we can just lay off. But I think it's just important for us to realize that, you know, community is the most important thing, and it's, you know, bigger than we think. And so therefore we have to keep our communities safe and keep it, you know, and keep our communities, I don't know what I'm gonna say here. I cut this out. I just think it's important for us to realize that we have a common goal, to share our culture and to preserve our culture. And sometimes that is, and specifically now, it's coming under attack. So I think that's why it's important for us to stand up and to continue showing up for everything and everyone.